All right. Hey there, and welcome to today's episode where we're going to continue our discussion on emotions and really talk about how emotions aren't as black and white as sometimes we think, or as like definitive as like just one emotion at a time. And really, when we're continuing off of our last episode, when we're talking about feeling our feelings and the importance of that, I want to introduce some concepts here that I think can be very helpful in the context of this journey. So a lot of this work is going to be drawn from Frederick Dotson in his book Levels of Energy, as well as Dr. David Hawkins in his book Letting Go and his Maps of Consciousness. But I mean, Lester Levinson. I mean, there's many authors that have much smarter than me that have written about this, that have educated people about these topics. And so I want to kind of just explain some kind of a broad concept idea. So, Dr. Hawkins, who was one of the probably the most influential authors I've ever read, as well as Frederick Dotson, they talk about this idea of like a level of consciousness. And they have this scale, and the scales different emotional states. So at the very bottom is they don't necessarily perfectly align in their own scales of how they created it, but it's pretty similar, right? So shame being at the bottom, guilt, grief, fear, anger, and then desire and pride, right? Kind of in the lower emotions. And then above that, right? Courage, neutrality, willingness, acceptance, joy, love, peace, right? And so on and so forth. And essentially, when you're looking at the scale itself, uh, it's important to understand that when you're in a certain state, you're not, it's not that you are just in a singular emotion, right? Emotions don't happen in like just a singular event, right? You don't just feel fear all the time. The reality is we bounce in and out of different states throughout the day. And a lot of times the emotions kind of come together and form like little emotional bubbles that connect, right? So you may feel fear, and then you may feel shameful about feeling fear, and you may feel angry about feeling shameful, and you may feel a sense of joy when you're walking with your significant other holding hands, and then all of a sudden you're back in fear, and then you're moving to a state of neutrality. So you're constantly kind of shifting. And how Frederick Dotson explains it is you have these pockets of different energy in your system, and you can use the words of emotion, and you kind of have your default state that you're in. And your default state is really kind of the sum total of all the different emotions that are and the energies that are going on in your body, divided by the amount, right? So kind of think of like the law of average, right? And that's kind of your default state. And the better you get at letting go of the lower emotions, right, which actually involves confronting them and feeling them, right? The fear, the anger, the guilt, the shame, even things like desire and pride. Really understanding these feelings and these energetic states, and not condemning them, not thinking they're bad, not rejecting them. What that does is as you let go of that, you naturally kind of move up. And so a lot of people are trying to, again, move up into happiness. Like, how do I make myself happy, while at the same time holding on to the lower emotions, fear, anger, shame, guilt, right? Things like that. And so they do things in their environment. They're like, I'm going to go to Hawaii. Well, the problem is the same energy that you have here is the same energy you're going to be carrying to Hawaii with you, you know? And so you may feel better moving your environment for a little bit, but if you haven't confronted and released a lot of the stuff going on in your body, it's that doesn't just magically just disappear. So a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll bounce in and out of relationships, they'll change jobs. I totally was guilty of that. Like, I would kind of just get complacent and kind of run into certain things that when I, you know, at certain jobs, and then I would just get like I would get antsy thinking I needed to change the job, not realizing that it was just a lot of my own stuff that was coming up that I needed to address. So with that being said, the point of this is really not getting so black and white and thinking I feel this one emotion, and realize that a lot of times emotions kind of coexist together. So you might, and they kind of latch on and form, and then they build upon each other. But when you want to move up into higher states of consciousness or higher states of energy or just higher emotional states, what is agreed upon is, by people that have really studied this stuff and actually, help people navigate this process, is the idea of not trying to do things to make these positive energies happen. Realize, understand that that's actually, in many ways, your default state. Love and peace and joy is actually your default state. And it's the stuff we're holding on to that actually brings us down from that. So by confronting, again, the lower energies, the lower emotions, and releasing and letting go of them, right? That is actually what allows us to lift up. And when you understand with anxiety, it's not about doing things to make yourself feel better, feel happy, or any of that. It's actually more about, again, confronting the energy of fear itself, feeling through the energy of self, feeling through that, releasing it, and then also everything underneath that: guilt, grief, sadness, shame, anger, right? All those things that we all have, by the way. And as we release and release and release and release, it naturally moves us up. And so I wanted to just share that idea because I think so many people get caught in like, I need to just feel this one emotion. It's like, no, we actually have to get good at feeling our whole emotional spectrum that we experience as humans. And really being able to be non-resistant to whatever we're feeling. Because the more non-resistant we are, which is another way of the more accepting we are of feeling what we feel, that prevents us from getting stuck in the loops that become self-reinforcing and self-perpetuating. And fear definitely does that. So the more you're resisting of fear, the more fearful thoughts you're going to have, the more fearful energy you're going to have, the more you're going to do the behaviors. And that's why with OCD and anxiety recovery, and in many ways, any form of recovery from something, we need to get really good at actually feeling what we're feeling and understanding this idea that feelings are more complex than we often think. Because the thing about like energy or feelings is they're something you're aware of, but they're not something that you can see and touch, right? So this is very much an internal experience, and this is definitely something you're going to learn and master from an experiential level, not like a thought and thinking level. So you don't need to sit and watch this episode a million times or read a ton of books on it. It's helpful to get information, but experiential awareness is really what's going to help you through this particular hurdle of feeling feelings. And so hope that was helpful. Wish you guys a great day as always. And and we'll continue this series on as we move on, and we'll dive in some more great stuff coming up for you. And see you guys soon. Hey there. So if you enjoyed that video, we've linked up a few more videos that we think you'd find helpful as well. And if you have found this helpful, we'd really appreciate your support by liking and subscribing. And if you're looking for help and guidance, please check out restoredminds.com as we have several options for you to get started. See you guys soon.